Group H, Ghana 0, Uruguay 2. Both teams are eliminated from the World Cup. So where to start? For Uruguay, it's the end. It's the end of an era, just like how it was for Belgium yesterday in all likelihood. This is it. I think that you have to see a changing of the old guard quite soon. Luis Suarez, Edson Cavani, Diego Godin, Martin Cáceres, Fernando Muslera. It sucks that it ends on a sour note like this, and I think they've earned themselves an eternal grateful spot in Uruguayan footballing history. But this is a bit of a harsh elimination. Uruguay goes out via the tiebreaker of goals scored. 2 goals scored, both of which came in this game, and 4 goals for the South Koreans. And I think this was avoidable because it's not like Uruguay doesn't have a lot of young up-and-coming talent going through the ranks at the moment. Diego Alonso just decides to field really old lineups, despite Uruguay having very decent attacking options, like De Arrascaeta, leaving him on the bench. Why? Why on the bench? He was Uruguay's best player that was out of position. Their second best player didn't play, and Uruguay's actual defensive midfielders didn't play because Vecino had to start even though he's not very good. I don't agree with the decision to start Vecino in this match. This is a criticism that I had going back to Uruguay's previous game against Portugal. And speaking of that, then against Portugal, Alonso decided to play 5 at the back in that game when they needed a result. And now you decide to get the lineup somewhat right because the best player was still playing in a defensive midfielder role when he should have been on the right. And at the 60th minute mark, about an hour into this match, he starts taking their attackers off, even though he knows that Korea were 1 goal away from overtaking Uruguay in the stands. That's a massive failure. Coaches and staff are made aware of what's going on in the other game as it unfolds. Uruguay could have made a good case to get that 3rd goal because Alonso takes their offensive teeth off the field. And no, I don't mean Luis Suarez physically biting anybody. That was just an unfortunate coincidence there. Pardon me. But he does that when South Korea is just 1 goal away from overtaking them in the table. Yeah, you can point to the penalty versus Portugal that I don't think was a penalty, but this failure rests on Uruguay and the inability and really the unwillingness to I think more noticeably shift towards that younger guard and have this reliance on guys like Cavani and Suarez and Muslera. I think it was a big mistake, a real big mistake, and I think it was a bit too scared of an approach from Alonso throughout this tournament. You leave your best player in this tournament on the bench for the first 2 games, and then he comes off and he scores 2 goals and is constantly dangerous. He's creating loads of chances, and Alonso takes him off to defend a lead that could implode right before their eyes. I don't get it. I don't. I really don't understand. It was just very poor in-game decision-making. You leave De Arrascaeta on that pitch. You take a 2-0 lead, barely even past the half-hour mark, and then you take him off because it's just coaching complacency. I think it's coaching complacency, or it's just scared. It's just scared tactics. For Ghana, unfortunately, they don't get revenge, and they kind of sort of relive that nightmare since Andre Ayew missed his penalty. Great opportunity to take the lead in the 21st minute, much like how Asamoah Gyan failed to convert his penalty back in South Africa 2010. And then to make matters worse for Ghana, Uruguay gets 2 quick goals in the 26th and 32nd minute. Yeah, maybe you give Suarez credit for the assist for De Arrascaeta's second on the night, but still, Uruguay were running roughshod. It looked like they were going to take this match by the horns and go on to score more, and they couldn't. They had over an hour to do it, and they couldn't find the back of the net again. I think for Ghana, really good performance in that match against Portugal. Could have gotten away with a draw from the game. Put on a clinic against South Korea. And just like Uruguay, I think Ghana has a lot of really promising young players coming up through their ranks as well. I think for the most part, though, for Ghana, they did have a couple of good chances in the second half, but they just didn't take them. And then when it got late, they had chance to break out, and they were just too leggy and underhit everything. And I think it was a poor performance compared to a drop off, at least from their first two matches. Created just very little. Then they sort of collapsed after those two goals from Uruguay, and it was just too much to overcome. But to end on a positive note for Ghana, they didn't get bossed in this group. They were a very, very stubborn side to come up against, and they showed a lot of promise. A lot of great talent, like I said. Kudus, Gideon, Mensah, Suleimana, maybe Lamti, maybe all these guys will be great players in the future. Kudus has great quality. He's only 22 years old. He can go really far if he can stay uninjured for the foreseeable future. I think he'll have a big impact, and they got to change the old guard. This should be the last hurrah for both IU brothers.